Good morning. Welcome to the Tyler Dickerhoof Show. Newswire, live on LinkedIn, Facebook. We're also joining on YouTube. Glad to be here with you. Today, I'm flying solo. Producer Alex is traveling. He's got daddy duties. His wife was busy at a work event over the weekend. So it's me. It's here. Today, we're talking about the trillion, I say that with a T, $1 trillion deal that President Trump, I would say, negotiated, for a proper term, over the weekend in the Middle East, countries such as Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. So much so it became popular on the weekly show Saturday Night Live, using it their cold open, poking fun, making comments. Here's where I want to go with this today. Whether we like it or not, whether we think whatever we think about the Middle Eastern countries, I think it's always important for a leader to understand what's best for their people. Now, I understand this invites an entire conversation about the, human rights conversation in the Middle East that maybe is different than much of what United States is today, especially when you look at different Christian, different Judaism groups, the rights of women that are so much different in the Middle East than here. But here's what I know, and here's what I understand about Donald Trump. He's a negotiator. Years ago, I was at different events with John Maxwell, my mentor, and people would ask him about Donald Trump. Is he a leader? And he's like, no, he's not a leader. He's a negotiator. And when you understand in that concept that he's a negotiator, you understand that he's going to look out best for maybe him. But I think it's been proven thus far through the first term and through the first 110, 15, 20 days, maybe it is now, of this presidency, it isn't always about him. Now, we could look at the $1.2 trillion in exchange. Is that good for the U.S.? I have to think so. The 500,000 chips that were ordered by United Arab Emirates to set up data centers in the Middle East, they ordered those from Nvidia. Is that good for the U.S.? I think so. Probably jobs, money. It affects the economy. You look at the $600 billion investment from Saudi Arabia in the U.S. Is that good? That's a lot of money. It's a lot of jobs. That's a lot that adds to the economy. So as much as we can always confuse the good with the bad, the human rights element with whatever, here's the element that I believe is most imperative. We can have an ideology of support for one, support for many, support for all. But that's funded somehow, some way. And if you're not sitting down at the table to hear where it's funded, by, through whom, have a conversation, what plays, what doesn't play, then the funding is going to come from places that you don't want it. We've seen that in recent history, whether it's the Mexican cartels, whether it's the involvement in the Chinese government in the United States. Well, it was President Trump who stood up and say, not so fast to both of those. Am I here as a Trump apologist? No, by no means. But when I look at it from leadership perspective, I also understand this, as I've learned. One thing about leadership is we have to be able to stomach. We have to be able to have a vision that maybe everyone doesn't get along with, and you're not going to get 100% right. But that points to a better, brighter future. We're in an economic, I would say, whirlwind. Post-COVID, we're trying to figure out generationally, where do things fit? How do they fit? Economically, what's our best path forward? And we've seen the Trump administration come in with a different tactic than what we've seen over the last 4 years as far as economic policy. We've had tariffs. We've had reallotment of funding. We've had people look into, what spending is going on? Where's money actually going? But here's the thing that I think is really interesting. This is one trip over 4 days to the Middle East. And in that, like I said, $1.2 trillion in economic exchange. Why? Because Trump understands if the United States is going to move forward, they can't keep taking a back seat. And one thing that I learned earlier this year listening to podcasts, listening to other thought leaders, is that one of the biggest problems the United States has is we have this gluttonous approach to consumerism in our world. And everyone else throughout the entire world knows it. See, we don't stop and take a minute to say, I can't afford that. It just doesn't happen in our society anymore. Now, for some people, it does. But as we've continued to see credit card debt, short-term debt go higher and higher and higher, as we continue to see educated students ask for loan forgiveness, as we continue to see our eyes much bigger than our stomachs, the rest of the world has taken note. And in certain countries, China, Mexico, others maybe not need to be identified, have said, this is an opportunity for us. This is an opportunity for us to provide products and allow the gluttonous consumer they use in the United States with a disposable mindset really become the goat, the fattened goat that everyone's going to feast on. And that's what's happened. And now all of a sudden we see an economic exchange with the Middle East to say, it isn't us just consuming. It's those countries putting dollars here. It's those countries taking our products. So much so that Qatar, they gave a plane to the United States. They also ordered 160 Boeing planes. That will provide jobs in the state I live in, Washington, but also South Carolina and many other states where those components are manufactured. See, jobs are what keep people going. Jobs are what fund the system. Jobs are what provide the taxes. Jobs are what allows for consumers to consume. The great challenge is, can we go to a point where I have to have it is replaced with, I can have it if I need it. See, that's what's so interesting is we have these conversations as we look at economically what's going on in today's age. When do we stop and say, maybe I am fine. Maybe I have enough. Maybe I don't need to compare so much. I was watching one of my videos this morning, and one thing they brought up, and I know you're engaging on social media, so take it for what it is. Without social media in today's world, where would be our comparison? Would it be comparing yourself to somebody else's car, house, decor, clothing? Maybe if you meet people in your office, you see people out walking around on the street, you happen to go visit a friend, maybe you watch a TV show, those things of pre-social media. Now, you flip open a TikTok, you flip open an Instagram reel, you watch something on Facebook, you look at Pinterest, and everything's a comparison. Everything is driven, I need this, I want this, I got to make it look like that. Now, one of the most interesting things is the rest of the world is in that same boat. And so that's where everyone is in this competitive race to say, where can I have a seat at the table? The leaders in the Middle Eastern countries, Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia, why did they give lavish praise to Trump? Well, one, he was willing to go there. He wasn't there to spit in their eye, upset their customs, make fun of them, chastise them. He was what each one of us hope would be a house guest. He was kind, he was embracing, he was generous, he was grateful. If I came over to your house tonight, wouldn't you want the same? Or would you want me to complain about the flooring, the food, the welcome, what practices you have when I'm not around? That wouldn't make me a good house guest. So why do we want something different? There's a time and place to stand for everything. But there's also a time to understand I may have made a career of negotiating, but now I need to lead. And here's the problem, is we want to quickly cut down, attack, shame people that aren't always wielding a sword. The best leaders know when to use a sword, when to use a pen, and when to use a smile. Because a smile goes way farther in leading, connecting, and serving. So as we think about this today, where do we go forward? What's the next step? We have now different individuals that are going to, over the next 45 days, I would imagine, you have other countries, other economies, other regions that are saying, don't leave me out. You're going to have an Asian contingency. You're going to have a Southern Pacific contingency. You're going to have a European contingency that's saying, ooh, I see what they did. I don't want to be left out. Because everyone knows that the United States, right, wrong, or indifferent, is the 900-pound gorilla, as they say, when it comes to consumerism. We may only have 300 million of the nearly 7.5, 8 billion people in this world, but we consume well more than our fair share. And that's what makes every other country look at the U.S. as the golden goose. So the best thing a golden goose can do is not be made to lay golden eggs. To understand that those eggs are valuable, they're worthwhile, but let's make a few omelets. Let's do this together. Let's try to protect our own while serving others. And we're in a day and age where we have to be cognizant of that. Because if not, they're going to weaken us from the outside in and then the inside out. Now, what does that mean, weaken? Yeah, today we can stand up for human rights. We can speak our speak. But I have friends that are from other parts of the country, other parts of the world, and they don't have those freedoms. We've seen those freedoms stricken down in Germany, in the United Kingdom. We long-standing know the restrictions in Asia. The things that we find commonplace in our society every day, from the protesting to the, I would say, outright domestic terrorism, that other countries, the penalty for those things. I remember in high school this happened. There's an individual who was in, I believe, Thailand. And maybe the country is wrong, but somewhere in Southeast Asia. And they did something pretty benign. They stood up for something they didn't agree with in the street. And they ended up being sentenced to lashings. See, it's little things like those that we forget when we're scrolling social media. And we're comparing. And we're wanting. And we're fed lies, or we're fed propaganda. Yeah, it happens. Okay. Am I guilty of it? I hope not. I hope I'm here having a conversation with you that we can stop, we can think, we can collectively agree. So I look out in that pasture and I see those cows grazing and I'm thinking, what's the best way for me to serve them? Because that's what I stop and think out when I look into this camera and I have this conversation with you. Is how can I best serve you? And for me, I think that's having honest conversations. Yeah. Do I necessarily agree with all of the human rights issues in the Middle East? No. But you know what? I live here. They live there. This is my house. That's their house. I can walk down the street and maybe the values that are imperative to me aren't the same for you. Do I need to come in and tell you your values are wrong? No. But I need to uphold and live by my values. And if I do so in a way that you respect it and you honor it, maybe you might start to agree with some of my values and vice versa. Because that's really how we lead. You got to start somewhere. And even if President Trump isn't your cup of tea, have to appreciate that the leader is growing. And sometimes leading starts by just sitting down at the table and being a gracious house guest and being willing to negotiate. Now, is this going to be the greatest deal that ever changed the American economy? I don't think so. But you know what? For any of those executives at Nvidia, for anyone at Boeing that works the line, same with Nvidia, this is a bright and exciting day. Because now instead of thinking, what are the tariffs going to do to us? What is the potential job outset? What's going on in my state? I just saw a president make a deal for the products that myself, my coworkers are making. That's got to be a good thing. Agree with him or not, he just helped you make sure that you have a job tomorrow. And isn't that what we should all be yearning for? Thanks for joining me today. I know it was a solo episode, a little bit shorter. Don't have as much to chop it up back and forth with Alex. We'll be back next week normally. Don't forget to tune in. My normally released podcast on Wednesdays. I think episode 202 releases this week. As well, make sure to, if you watch this on YouTube, hit subscribe as well as the bell to get notified whenever we drop new content. We have podcasts that also are released wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. And lastly, if anything spurred a thought, man, I'd love to continue the conversation. Just throw me a comment, share, whether on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. I'd love to carry on the conversation with you and what your take is. Maybe it's a poke in the eye like Saturday Night Live, or maybe it's a grateful hand and thanking, hey, I know that our company is going to survive another day because we have investment from customers and people that believe in the products we make. And I think that's what all of us should yearn for, even if it's some steak or a little ground beef. Maybe I'll have a burger tonight. Sounds like a good idea. Yeah, I mean, it's grilling season everywhere, isn't it? Thanks for being here. Till next time, choose to lead with impact.